Hi everyone, the CD Spin here, back finally reviewing the new Kendrick Lamar album. Isn't life just great? Yeah, it's the insanely hyped up and incredibly hyped up Mr. Morale as well as the Big Steppers. This is a new double album by someone who is easily, I would say, this generation's best rapper of all time, clear of any doubt, of course, Kendrick Lamar. He has released just some of the best hip-hop albums, not just of the last decade, but of all time. As you can see, those beauties right there. Really starting with 2011 Section 80 mixtape, which is a really great mixtape, and with a sort of loose narrative that is beautifully explored. However, it didn't really fully show what Kendrick could do. That is in the hands of Good Kid, Mad City. Right there. And it's hands down one of the best albums I've ever heard. I mean, it's just a perfect 10. There's just really nothing like it. It's an amazing, insightful, incredible, and mind-blowing album, which explores his background in perfect songs like Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, Good Kid, or really actually any song off this record. It's pretty much just the album I'd recommend to somebody who is just wanting to get into hip-hop. Because it really shows what hip-hop and rap can be, because it's sort of commercial, but it's also very deep and lyrical and thick. Yes, I said it's thick. But like I said, it still has more commercial rap sensibilities, which is totally okay. That's fine. However, it is not the magnum opus of Kendrick Lamar's discography. It is just behind To Pimp a Butterfly, which, I've said this before, and I will say it again, too. It's the best album of all time. I'm being dead serious. Name one album that's better. You know what? Whatever you say, I can easily counter that. There is no album as creative, interesting, larger-than-life, intelligent, and well thought out as To Pimp a Butterfly. And look, I don't want to say much about T-Pab because I might want to talk about it in another video. Who knows? I'm probably not going to review it for a classwork review, because that would be insane of me to do, because, I mean, just think about it. It's T-Pab. It's hard to review. But then after T-Pab is Untitled Unmastered, which is a genuinely great record. It's way more than just T-Pab outtakes. And besides the Black Panther original soundtrack, the last record by Kendrick in 5 whole years, yes, 5 whole years, yeah, 5 years, I need to think about that, is Damn. And I know I and a lot of people were not super crazy about it at first listen, and when it originally came out, but recently I have grown to like it a lot more. It's not his best, of course, but it's genuinely an interesting and very enjoyable release. I don't feel like it was super consistent or anything, but hey, it's all good, man. So now all there is to talk about is this new double album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And before the release of this record last Friday, we got the non-album single, The Heart Part 5, which I was actually going to talk about in a whole separate video, but I just didn't really have the time. That seems half-assed, but I chose that it would definitely be much better to just review it on here, just talk about it here. So I actually at first didn't really like The Heart Part 5 that much. I know that is extremely controversial because everybody seemed to love it at first. But I thought it was just a little bit sonically, maybe a little goofy. But now I've come to realize that is absolutely amazing and one of his best singles of all time. Lyrically and theme-wise, topically, this is an incredible track, like, of course. But musically, it's also great. The bass and percussion are just absolutely incredible. And the bass especially is so fantastic and really builds the foundation so well. But anyways, I guess there really isn't more to say. We should just really get into the review. But before I do, I just want to say thank you. If you're watching this video, then thank you for just listening. And just know, no matter what score I give this, Kendrick is still the absolute GOAT. Let's just get into a review of Mr. Morale and Big Steppers. The album starts off with United in Grief, which is just, wow. An incredible opener for the record, one of my favorites from Kendrick, with that beautiful line, I hope you find some peace of mind, with vocals from Sam Du, who returns multiple times on this record. These lines, he says, are meant to tell a story through the perspective of Kendrick's inner thoughts. I've been going through something 1,855 days, really just puts into perspective just how much time has gone into this record. I mean, this whole record is just a portrayal of what he has been going through. especially reinforced by the lines I just mentioned. This track is just a beautiful opener with that piano and insane drums in the middle. This album is very piano heavy in my opinion. And it works very, very well all of the time, pretty much. The lines "I grieve different" are some of my personal favorites on the album because they're so simple, yet they say a lot. Essentially explaining how Kendrick has changed because of his upbringing, and just how his success through speaking about his upbringing has affected him. But then N95 with Baby Keem is the next track, and I didn't realize this before somehow, but N95 is a reference to the face mask. How did I not realize that? I'm so stupid. This track is the banger, the hit, the commercial song off this record, and for good reason too. I mean, it's just one of my favorites. Being a more commercial song does not mean that it doesn't have to have great lyrics, though. This song really seems to be a criticism of the response to COVID, which seems pretty straightforward, as do all the lyrics here. It's a very fast-paced track, which I do love. That flow is just insane, and this track is just one of my absolute favorites. And then Worldwide Steppers is another one of my absolute favorites too, and it grew on me slightly. It's easily one of the most, low-key songs off this album. I love the repetitive instrumental note that lingers throughout. It allows for breathing room and just to really understand and digest what Kendrick is talking about. Topic-wise, this track is sort of negative, in a very good way, of course. It shows where Kendrick is at mentally. He talks about the numerous times he had, sexual intercourse with a white lady, and how his ancestors in the past would shame him for it as a black man. He also references religion and how he, in a way, abandoned where he came from, his roots, like he became the issue that he was talking about, which is something that Kendrick has talked about before, but overall, a very, very solid track. And Die Hard is the next track, and it's one that I've seen a lot of hate for, which I just don't really understand. Sure, it can maybe take you out of the album a little bit, but I still think it's a very, very nice and enjoyable track. It's like, to make a comparison, Complexion off of T-Pab. It's not a lot of people's favorites, but it's very, very nice. I don't have much to say, but it's a very solid track, and Amanda Reifer's vocals are just great. And then Father Time is one of the absolute highlights from this record. Has a beautiful structure, and somehow I've managed to avoid saying this so far, but the production on this record is just immaculate, and this song in specific is really, really nice and beautiful. This beat is amazing on the track, and the features are really, really, really good. This track talks about father issues, and I feel like on this track the writing is super clear, and just something else. He explores how this terrible, terrible idea of masculinity is passed down from father to children, generation to generation, which he will explore more on Mother I Sober, which we will get to later. Essentially how, whether it be the absence of a father or even a father directly firsthand being there, maybe abusive or whatnot, has affected the black community in such an immense way. This track is just very obviously one of the biggest moments on this record. After Rich Interlude, which is a great little interlude featuring Baby Keem, we have Rich Spirit. And this track discusses Kendrick reflecting on how his money affects his character and how he explores his morality with being rich. This is just a very raw, clean-cut, and sonically cool example of how Kendrick tries to keep his life balanced, such as morality, his ego, and just other stuff in general. Overall, I don't enjoy this song too much. I think the production is a little bit weird and just, you know how I said Die Hard takes you out of the album a little bit? This definitely takes me out of the album, but it's still very, very well written and explored. Next is We Cry Together, which has been getting a lot of attention after the release of this record, and rightfully so. I mean, this might just be my favorite. Probably not. Maybe top 2 to top 3. It's an absolutely soul-crushing and intense track that you can only really truly get a grasp of if you listen to it, which I assume most of you hopefully have already. But my jaw was just on the floor when I first heard this track, and I've said on a couple of these last tracks that their lyrics are very direct, but these lyrics are as direct as possible, and that's because it's a very candid and heated argument, obviously with music too, and Taylor Page, who is an actress, does a phenomenal job on this, probably my favorite feature on this whole record, and just including her in this track because she's an actress is a genius move since it makes everything way more believable and adds so much life to this track. The track really just shows the toxicity in relationships and how toxic couples really never let it go and continue hurting themselves in the process, just tiptoeing around what they really want to say, and at the end just defaulting to sex instead of discussing their issues or even breaking up in the first place. It's really way more than what I can describe it. It's a super impactful track and one of my absolute favorites, without a doubt. And it reminds me a lot of Kim by Eminem, except way less violent and way better. And then Purple Hearts is the last track off the first disc, and I'm still kind of on the fence about it. I think parts of it are absolutely beautiful and the execution is decent. However, it can get very repetitive over its 5.5-minute length, and it can get pretty grating. However, the features by Summer Walker and Ghostface are really, really good. And that's it for the first disc, which was the Big Stepper side, which I just only now heard someone mention the fact that these discs are mirrored, like the last track on this whole record, Mirror. So the first one, on the contrary to the record's title, is actually the Big Steppers. And now for Mr. Morale, Count Me Out opens the second disc, and it's once again including one of those beautiful vocal lines saying, "We may not know which way to go on this dark road," and this track is just another absolutely great one. Just the whole composition of the track and the way it builds up is beautiful and makes for a pretty great hit. It never really stays in one place, which works for the absolute better. And there are many moving parts of this record. I'm not really sure what this song specifically means. However, by being the first track on the second disc, it absolutely represents a change, not in the album just like as a whole, but in Kendrick. And then Crown is a super nice track. It's a piano-led track, which I was saying is an absolutely stellar part of this record, the piano, and it's super beautiful, rich, and complex. The main line here, "I can't please everybody," essentially just means that Kendrick has accepted the fact that he simply cannot please everyone. The more that you do, the more that you accomplish, the more that people expect from you, and it's just hard. And I feel like a lot of the reactions to this record just show that this track is especially true. I mean, this track is just a good, meditative, and honestly beautiful track. But then Silent Hill is absolutely my least favorite. It's not really a Kendrick song. I mean, it just isn't. It's boring as hell. Offers nothing new, isn't fun, and that Kodak feature is just ass. I mean, it could be worse, but this just is not great. I just don't really know what else to say. However, I will say this. First of all, I like the silenced pistol shot. I think that was really cool to add in the beat. This beat is just insane, and that's one of my absolutely favorite parts of this track, like, without a doubt, because otherwise this track just isn't that great. And also, the inclusion of Kodak Black here. He's obviously a very just not great person who has a lot of accusations. However, it represents growth. It represents growth in terms of adding him on here, and Kendrick understands that, and it may be hard to do that, but he understands it. And then Savior and Savior Interlude are a great combination of tracks. The former here is a little great interlude, and Savior is a very, very insightful track. He basically tries to make a point here that he is not a savior, he is not a shepherd, that he is not a god. He also talks about COVID and political correctness, as well as what he has been saying throughout this whole entire record. His struggles, his flaws, and that Kendrick is flawed like all of us. He's not a god, he's not perfect, he's just a person, alright? He has his large issues, he's done his bad things, he's still growing, and growth. That's a big, big part of this record. So remember that. I think this is a very, very well done song and has a great Baby Keem feature too. As well as the Savior interlude, which probably has one of the best features off this whole record with Baby Keem. Remember what I was saying about growth just a couple seconds ago? Well, yeah. Auntie Diaries is the next track, and it's a difficult listen. Mainly because, and you've definitely heard of this already, but his repeated use of the F slur. Now, I don't think that the F slur is okay at all. And this is hard to accept, but the song is made better by the use of it. He says all of these things to make an impact in what he is trying to say. I think it's a beautiful song and absolutely one of my favorites. It's a very meditative track that swells up toward the end, and lyrically, to give some context, it's basically about just trying to understand at a young age the close trans people in his life. It's obviously way more than that, and there's so many parts that happen. I mean, it's insane. It's Kendrick growing over the course of one single song, and battling his faith with the lyrics, "The day I chose humanity over religion," which is just beautiful and like almost made me cry. And him starting to use his cousin's preferred pronouns. It's just a very, very well made and executed track in terms of the idea, even with certain issues. And again, I will say this, the use of dead naming, the slurs, misgendering, while it may not be okay to use them, I will say this, just It's very, very effective at getting the point across so that it could hit the right audiences and effectively point out the flaws and very much evils in transphobia. Again, this may be hard to accept, but he's just making a point that you may not realize. And it's very fucking effective at what it does. It's just an artist at Kendrick's stature and point and attention making commentary on trans people like this is just amazing because whether you think so or not, he is absolutely supporting them. And it's just beautiful. There's no other way he could have done it. I mean, as saying a half-assed bar or even song where he says everything PC, he says everything like correct, would make zero, and I mean zero impact. Mr. Morale is just an incredible track. I mean, it has large amounts of replayability, and there's a level of aggression that gets me so damn hyped. It's a huge banger with such a mesmerizing beat on it. Lyrically, this track is about generational trauma, which is a subject of a lot of tracks off this record we have talked about, and this track brings up one of the most interesting points off this entire record. The line, "Think about Robert Kelly, R. Kelly, and if he were molested, I wonder if life would fail him," which is a very, very difficult and raw line to understand, but it's a very, very good point about how generations in the black community fail each other because of one person failing the other. Like in the example given, one person abusing or molesting or etc. to someone, it changes them, which leads to a cycle of the abused person abusing another person. It's all systemic, and this track paints a picture with that, while also being a very, very great song. And that's what Kendrick just amazes me at, making incredible music with just as incredible lyricism. Just like Mother I Sober, which is the penultimate track, the longest, and also my personal favorite. It's easily one of the most heartbreaking and hardest hitting songs I've probably ever heard in the past, year or so. I mean, it's amazing. It's once again about generational trauma and failures like the last track, but instead viewed through Kendrick's personal experiences and point of view. Instrumentally, it's quiet. There's very little going on for the most part. Kendrick is quiet, monotone. There's a quiet piano pressing down just a couple of notes, and even the vocals from Beth Givens of Portishead are wispy, quiet, yet beautiful. It's so hard to review this and even find the words, goddamn. Kendrick talks about his youth and upbringing and even now. With the lines, "They accuse my cousin, did he touch you, Kendrick?" and him saying no, which is the truth, since he wasn't actually sexually assaulted. He did not receive trauma from that directly, but the constant questioning itself led to trauma and questioning. He also connects that to his mother's sexual assault, how it's so rampant, and how his mother knew, and was just looking out for him. And I forgot to mention this on the last track, but there is a line about pain bodies, which is essentially when someone is abused in some way, a part of their personality is added, reflecting that trauma itself. It's really insightful stuff to think about. He says he sets people free from pain bodies, including himself. This is just a bit later addressed with, "You did it, I'm proud of you, you broke a generational curse, say thank you, daddy," and the lines, "Thank you, daddy, thank you, mommy, thank you, brother," coming from his child. Overall, a fucking phenomenal track. I mean, just the best on the record. What else is there to say? It's not all over, though. I mean, the track Mirror is the closer. Yes, there's another track. And people have said this is just not a good track, and I totally disagree. I think it's a great one. I mean, sure, it's not the most, impactful track to end an album lyrically or musically, but a lot of the times, a more relaxed and just, cool, sonically cool track works the best to end something. I just love the lines, "I choose me, I'm sorry," because it's all what it comes down to. That growth I was talking about many times earlier, that's what the growth came down to. But yeah. So, oh my god. This is a new Kendrick album, and I don't even know what to say. This album is a difficult listen. It's an album that takes so much time to truly understand, and it will take a long time to be fully understood. I just don't think people or me truly have a grasp on it. I'm just saying, people will understand this album for the difficult masterpiece that it is in the near future, but it will take some time. What do I think, though? This album is just incredible, and I didn't always think that. Like a lot of you, my first reaction was, he came up with that after all this time, but now, I truly realized every bit of this has purpose. This review would have taken me even longer if I didn't realize before that there will never be a time where I will truly be happy with this review. Even as I'm over 10 listens, almost 20, I mean, I don't fully understand it. And that isn't to sound super pretentious. I mean, it's still just an album. I mean, he's a man. He's not a god. I explained this earlier. This album isn't perfect. We all know that. But Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is at heart about growth, generational trauma, but most importantly, Kendrick. And you will grow too while listening to this album, like, no doubt about it. It's like a therapy session. And like a therapy session, it's raw, it's genuine. It's just Kendrick. No matter what way you cut it, it's Kendrick. And it means business. It's Mr. Goddamn Morale and the Big Steppers too. If you gave it just one or maybe even 2 listens and seemed weirded out, I urge you immediately to give it more listens, because somewhere down the line your opinions will change. I'm feeling a light to decent 9. Like, for real. Like, actually. And that's about it, guys. See ya. Peace.